Good evening and welcome. I'm not sure exactly where I'm looking right now because we have, we're in a hybrid session. I'm the only one with Alex.
Look straight ahead. Look straight ahead, Adam. No, straight ahead.
Right there.
Adam, the camera's straight ahead, that's it.
All right, very good. So now, unfortunately, I won't be able to see you folks. You'll be seeing my better side. I'm Adam Block, Chair of the Needham Planning Board, and I call this meeting to order. This meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted in a hybrid manner. It's all Zoom, except I'm in the room. Right. Correction. I sit corrected. Thank you, Alex. This meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted in a remote manner consistent with state regulations and is being recorded. Public access to this meeting does not ensure that there will be public participation unless required by law. We have two, actually no, we don't. We do have a one hearing scheduled tonight at 7:05, but we'll come to that momentarily. For the record, I'll now confirm attendance of the Planning Board members and staff. When I call your name, please respond that you are present. Paul Alpert?
Here.
Artie Crocker?
Present.
Jean McKnight?
Present.
Natasha Espada?
Present.
And we'll note that Chair Adam Block is present. From our planning department, Lee Newman?
Present.
And Alex Klee?
Present.
Excellent, thank you. For those participating in this meeting tonight, please be aware that anything you share or state will be a matter of public record and others will be able to see you. All supporting materials for this meeting are, including the agenda and our packet, are available on the town's website at needhamma.gov. Again, that's needhamma.gov. Unless otherwise noted. The ground rules for this meeting are designed to allow for an accurate public record. I will introduce, if we have any speakers on our agenda, and I may ask our board members for any comments, questions, or motions. And with that, I'd like to start us off. Our first item on our agenda is actually a hearing, a continuation of the hearing for Major Project Site Plan Special Permit number 2022-03 with the applicant Wellbow 4 Needham Landlord LLC with respect to a property located at 100-110 West Street in Needham. I understand that we have received a request from the applicant to continue the hearing. Does anyone have any comment or question at this time? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing to Lee, November 15th at 7 o'clock. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I make a motion to continue here to November 15th at, you said 7 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
7 p.m.?
We're meeting on Thursday, December 15th?
No,
This
no.
is November 15th.
November
right?
15th.
Oh, November 15th.
Yes.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing based on a request by the applicant for November 15th at 7 p.m. Any discussion on the motion?
And can I just confirm the time, just to be technical? Is it actually 7 o'clock, or would it actually be more like 7:05 or 7:15 when the hearing would be?
It depends if everyone gets in on time, but we're going to go at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion?
No, but I just want to point out that what I have on my calendar are planning board meetings that were sent by Alex Klee. And because I did not put them on my calendar, but they were put there by an invitation from Alex, all these upcoming planning board meetings are on my calendar for 7:15.
I have the same number.
So Alex, if I may suggest that when you have a chance, doesn't need to be done right away.
I can update them.
Maybe you can go in and resend these invitations so that our calendars are accurate for 7 o'clock meetings in the future.
While, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
while we're in discussion mode of this motion, I just want to say that I think this is a very positive development that the applicant is exploring possible revisions or modifications to its currently proposed project, as the letter put it. Very pleased to hear that.
Well, we look forward to seeing whatever those proposals or proposed changes are. I don't know what they are now, so, but it's a good indication that they're open to, I think, the messages that they've received from all parts of the town. So I concur with you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert,
Aye.
Artie Crocker,
Aye.
Jean McKnight,
Aye.
Natasha Spada.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We have continued this item to November 15th at 7 p.m. The second item on our agenda this evening is the decision with respect to major project site plan review special permit amendment decision to the to application number 2017-01 with respect to a property located at 29-37 Franklin Street in respect of the petitioner Sira Naturals Inc. Doing business as Air. We've received the decision. I have a number of comments. I'm not sure if other members do as well. Does anyone else have any
I
comments?
do.
Okay.
Yes,
I have some comments.
Okay, so we have comments from Jean, we have comments from Paul, Natasha, or Artie. Do either of you have any comments on the decision at this time?
The only comment, but more like an observation or something like, I know we were talking about having this be where they have to come back for a full hearing, and I know we've decided that's what we were deciding. I have a little reservations. I'm not going to change my decision, but I had a little reservations of why that was really necessary, because treating them, I think it feels like we're treating them differently than is really necessary, because I don't envision that having an impact on what the final decision is when they come back. So I just have a few reservations about that. That being said, I'm not going to change my mind.
Okay, so we're not, so I understand that you have no further comment on the decision. I understand your reservations. I'm going to take these comments in the order that I saw them. So Jean, I'm going to go with you, and then Paul, I'll come to you, and then I'll speak last. So Jean, would you like to take us through your changes, please?
I don't see my comments as being substantive, but rather just of consistency and reference, and also there is a typo. On page 2, section 1.3, the first line, there is a typo in that the words "the following" should be deleted, so that it should read, "The petitioner is now requesting that the 2017 special permit be amended as follows."
Good.
So the words "at the following," I think, are inadvertent. Then in section 1.7 and section 1.9, I think a reference to the prior decision, section 3.7, should be inserted the way it was just up above in section 1.6, so that when we speak of section 1.4, and I'm reading now from this decision, section 1.7, section 1.4 stated that the medical marijuana facility will only dispense medical marijuana products, etc. It should say section 1.4 stated, and section 3.7 required that the medical marijuana facility. And if Lee, who drafted this, disagrees with any of these changes I'm discussing, I really welcome her response. But I think that the same should be in section 1.9. It should say section 1.9 of this decision should say section 1.6 stated, and it says states now. I would use the past tense, so it's just the same as the prior ones. Stated, and section 3.7 required that the attached garage will house the van. My last comment has to do with two sections of the proposed decision. I realized that when we're reciting what the applicant applied for, it was appropriate to say, you know, we list them all: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Then it says on the first page, seventh, by making such additional amendments to the original decision dated June 13, 2017, as are needed to comport with the preceding proposed amendments. But in fact, we did not make any additional amendments to the original decision. It was, you know, it's just thrown in there usually in case they need it.
Well, the reason I left it in there was I was concerned that, you know, I didn't draft this decision to go back and actually look at the primary decision and amend language in it to make it consistent with these terms that you were now changing. So I thought that was a catch-all that I was trying to capture it with that phrase.
I see. Well, as I said, I think it's appropriate on the first page, the third paragraph of the decision, but I question its appropriateness on our vote. And of course, our vote was whatever our vote was. So if we use that language.
No, you haven't voted yet. We just had a conversation about this, and we talked about the framework for this decision. We haven't voted anything.
Okay. So, you know, when we come to the vote, we go down, you know, we're giving the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth relief.
Right.
And seventh, by making such additional amendments to the original decision that are needed to comport with the preceding proposed amendments. You think we do need that vote? And
well, the only thing I was concerned about is if there's a condition in the base permit that gets modified by this vote. I haven't specifically called it out.
And the same language is at the end of, it's kind of odd the way. Well, I mean, it's at the end of section 3.2 under under.
Well, I mean, I think, Jean, we could eliminate it and just assume that these changes that you voted modify anything in the base permit, and then there won't be any ambiguity, which I think is what you're concerned about.
Right. You mean we should do what, Lee?
I think maybe we should do what you recommended. Then it makes it clear that that's the only relief that we've granted. And if that relief modified something, then that's assumed without this other language, which tends to confuse it.
Good. I appreciate that response. And so to be clear, it would be in our vote that we haven't taken yet, we would not say seventh and go on, you know, but we would certainly say what's at the very end.
You would say you get rid of
with the benefit of the following plan modifications.
Correct.
And then when it comes to section 3.2, if I guess what I would say if whoever is making the amendment would say with the changes discussed tonight, and that would take care of the typo and the two references to section 3.7 and the deletion of those lines. Okay, that's what I have.
Very good.
So,
thank you. Paul?
Yeah, before I get to the changes that I caught, I think I'm understanding Jean, but I want to make sure, and I'm agreeing with it, that number seventh, although it's probably appropriate that it stays in the third paragraph on the first page because it was requested, but seventh comes out everywhere else.
Yes.
It comes out at section 3.2, and it comes out in our vote.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that whole. wholeheartedly, because we are not making additional amendments as are needed to comport with the preceding proposed amendments. We are adopting those proposed amendments. So, I have two issues, and each one kind of shows up in multiple sections. In Attorney Smart's letter, they request that they be allowed to purchase marijuana products other than those cultivated and processed at the petitioner's Milford facility. And even though he just says marijuana products, their permit is only for medical marijuana products. And I would like to add the word medical in the places where we talk about marijuana products other than those cultivated and processed at the petitioner's Milford facility. So that in the third paragraph, on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, number 4, it says, by allowing sales of medical marijuana products.
Which section, please, Paul?
This is on page 1 in the third paragraph. This is under 4th.
Uh-huh.
4th, by allowing sales of medical marijuana products.
Yes.
And then this shows up again in section 1.3.
Yes.
Again, it's reiterating 4th, by allowing sales of medical marijuana products. And
then on page 4.
Yes, on page 4, in the therefore, under 4th, by allowing sales of medical marijuana products, and that's the important place because that's our vote.
And then at 3.2 as well on page 5.
Yes, 3.2 as well on page 5, correct? And I think that does that issue.
Good.
Now, the second issue that I have is we are adopting these amendments in two areas. One is things that are perpetual, and some are things that are only for 8 months. And my recollection is that the purpose of having the 8-month requirement, the temporary requirement, was so that we could monitor traffic and parking, and possibly, I think that the request by the police department is that we check out the traffic and the parking, but also there was questions by the abutters about the customers or the clients hanging around after they purchased their medical marijuana and
using the product on site.
And using the product on site. And so I think we're also monitoring whether it is bothering the neighbors if the customers and clients are continuing to do that. And so I questioned whether all of the ones that we're voting to be temporary really should be temporary. So we have as being permanent the change of name, which is fine.
Yeah.
And changing the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control.
Okay, Paul, but while you mentioned that, I just want to clarify that, because I went back, Adam caught this afternoon, I went back to the Board of Health memo, and the Board of Health takes the position in their letter to us that both parties have jurisdiction. So we should, I think what we should be doing in that other one is basically extending it to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, but retaining the Department of Public Health.
in addition to the Massachusetts Department of Health as applicable.
So, wait a minute, let's be clear. It's the Cannabis Control Commission, and it's definitely the Needham Board of Health. And the Needham Board of Health is saying that the state Department of Public Health also has retained jurisdiction?
Yes, they say the
Not just the
state has.
Needham Board of Health?
This is exactly what they said in their memo to us. They said the Board of Health agreed that both regulations need to be followed. Along with the CC regulation, the Mass Department of Public Health Standards specifically, and they list the chapter, has to do with sanitation standards for food establishments, must be followed, specifically for the production, preparation, and storage, dry, cold holding of edibles or marijuana-infused products, as is written in the Needham Board of Health Article 20 regulation to ensure sanitary and safe operations of marijuana treatment centers.
So Paul, there's a distinction made between the handling and safe conduct and practices around the production and sale of medical marijuana products in whatever form they are, and yet there is a unique provision where some of the medical marijuana product is an edible, and there may be an overlapping jurisdiction.
Okay, so in second,
for different purposes.
What's listed as second throughout, it's going to be by requiring the petitioner to comply with the requirements of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission in addition to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
That's what my comment to Lee was earlier today.
Okay.
And would we recite what they applied for, even though they didn't use those words? Do we insert those words? Both
That's a good question, because that's not what they applied for.
Yeah, and we've got 1.3 and the third paragraph on the first page that is reciting what they applied for.
And what they applied for is what they applied for. I think it's just in what we find and what our conditions are.
Right. So it should probably, let's take a look at the findings and conclusions. That would be paragraph 1.3.
Yeah, although that paragraph 1.3 is also just repeating the request.
That's not,
okay.
That's
and
not an applicable finding.
So 1.3 stays the same, except that we're adding the word medical.
And I'm looking for what.
Well, maybe we add another finding that indicates that.
It will be in 3.2.
That's of our condition.
That's where it would be.
Yep, in 3.2.
In addition to the requirement.
In addition to the Massachusetts Department of Health as applicable.
And don't we need the word requirements or something? In addition to the requirements of the Massachusetts.
And they did, yes, that's fine. The requirements of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health as applicable.
Okay. In 3 points.
So, Paul, you were talking.
Yes.
And then.
Sorry, Paul.
No, it's okay, Lee. It was helpful.
But no, this is important that we get this right.
So what other comments did you have?
Okay, so my question is whether we have first and second as being permanent.
Yes.
Then we have third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and, well, we're taking out seventh. So my question is whether the appointments only, I think we need to discuss whether the requirement of appointments only is really something that affects parking and traffic. And so it should not be permanent, it should only be temporary. And especially the one about allowing sales of medical marijuana products other than those cultivated at the petitioner's Milford facility, which is fourth. I don't see why that should be temporary. I think that should be permanent. That doesn't affect parking or traffic or the use by the customers after they've purchased.
Well, it does speak to the breadth of product. And that can.
Yeah, but what does that have to do? But what does that have to do with traffic and parking?
Well, it could if there are fewer products, there'd be fewer impacts.
No, it's not fewer products. It's just a question of where they can purchase it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not just a
Paul.
function of purchasing. Hold on, Artie. It's not just a function of purchasing it, though. It's basically they have a grow-op, as I understand it, when they say cultivated and processed at that facility. They want to be able to buy and acquire other products to sell that are not manufactured at their facility, which by nature means that instead of having some products, they would have more products. So by
No, not necessarily. It means to me that they're substituting products.
Yeah, it could just be that. We don't know for a fact it means additional products. It means the products that they're selling, not all of them. Some of them may come from somewhere else. As Paul says, it could be a substitution. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening with
Adam,
the
the amount of product that they sell
yes,
is a function of how many customers they have, how many orders they have.
of what they can sell,
of what they're going to sell the same amount of product.
Well, there's a distinction I make. There's a distinction I make on what they actually sell is what's sold, but what is for sale is a different matter. Whether it's true, like Artie says, that it's a total substitution of or in addition to. I mean, I'm not judging it. I'm not commenting whether one is right or wrong. I'm simply pointing out that if we're expanding what they're allowed to sell, it is an expansion.
Adam,
Yes, go ahead.
Adam, if I may, the question is, why do we need to re-examine that in 8 months?
We don't.
What is the function of re-examining that in 8 months when the purpose of the 8-month requirement is to monitor traffic and parking and people smoking outside of the facility after they've purchased?
As if it's possible that they have fewer products to consume on site, that they may have a tendency to consume less
And
on
I'm
site.
going to tell you that the amount of product that they have has absolutely nothing to do with where they obtain the product.
I understand that relationship. I just think that if we're granting a special permit for additional relief, that other than the name change and the subject matter jurisdiction between the two state boards governing this as a whole, for those that are within our control, the police department was pretty clear that they wanted our ability to review all impacts. We're not limited to one or the other. The purpose of the review is to understand the concerns if there are any. So I don't want to limit the scope of that review. That's how I see it.
I'm going to disagree with you with my recollection of what the police department wanted. I don't think the police department was asking us to review everything. I think they were asking us to review the impact on parking and traffic.
I think my recollection was a little broader than that. It wasn't just limited to parking and traffic.
Lee, do you have the memo from the police department handy?
Let me go, I'll open up Citrix and get it.
And furthermore, Paul, we had testimony from other neighbors that said that there were concerns for other types of disturbances beyond parking and traffic. So I think in fairness to both and to ensure that we have the maximum discretion possible, That would be a logical thing to do. If the rest of you disagree, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm just saying that it doesn't seem to me, when we have reason to believe that there are other types of disturbances, and that the police department hasn't narrowed the type of disturbances that they're interested in, that we would necessarily eliminate that as a temporary condition as well. Artie, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, as I think we can all recall at the, several weeks ago when we were first looking at this and deciding what we do and what guidance that Lee was looking for, I think it was clear that some of us were hesitant about having them to come in for let's say a full hearing again, and basically come in as a review, come in a little bit more of a review to make sure how things were going. It does not seem necessary to hold them to a standard well beyond any other type of, I phrase it, well beyond what is necessary.
Well, we concurred, Artie, though.
Please, you guys were speaking for a long time, and so we concurred that we're going to have them come back in for the review, but it seems unnecessary to review every single thing. I was hesitant to have the full review at all. I voted. I put a sign an agreement Lee was asking for, and I respect what Lee is asking for. I think it's totally unnecessary for everything to come under review again. Because if they came in and said, you know what, we would like the opportunity to have purchase product somewhere else as a substitution, or for whatever the reason being, because I'm not sure if we've had all the reasons why they want this substitution. I don't see a reason for us to, I'll use the phrase, act so much like a big brother to come in and kind of slam them as far as what they are requesting.
And you
here.
think that I'm slamming them, Artie? Artie, you imply
I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating the word a little bit. Okay, I'm exaggerating the word a little bit here. So I think it seems unnecessary as what could be perceived as a big brother thing, as far as they want the opportunity for purchasing product. Not everything coming out of their warehouse. It seems unnecessary.
Artie,
for us to put
I understand. You raised your point. I understand your point. Let's go to some new comments. If that's okay.
Okay. Yes, I appreciate that, but that same point was being raised over and over and over again, trying to discount what Paul was saying.
So
I'm agreeing.
Artie, I'm going to move on to Natasha for another comment. Natasha, go ahead.
If I may, I'm not.
Paul.
I'm with this issue, please, Adam. Adam, I would like to hear from Natasha and Jean, but I need to have them talk about all of the issues that I'm asking about as to whether they should be moved from the 8 months to the permanent.
I understand that.
May I explain which items I wish to move, or I wish to discuss should be moved? Can I get it all on the table, please?
I see. Yes, Paul, please. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So this also goes to the question, and on this one I have a question. I'm not as firm as I was about the where the marijuana products are obtained from. The question of whether housing the vans in Needham rather than in Milford overnight is an issue that really, and I appreciate the fact that Alex has been sending us emails to try to get us to be able to see the police memos, but I'm not able to work on that while I'm on Zoom and go to my emails, and she's just giving me a link that's not giving me the memos right away.
I can read the memos if you want me to read them.
Yes, but let me.
Let's get it on the table first, Lee, and then.
Right. I'm questioning whether requiring the vans to be in Milford rather than in Needham is something that we need to review in 8 months in order to, again, it's my recollection that we're talking about parking and traffic and possibly people smoking on the premises. And I question it. I'm leaving that up for discussion, whether that should be permanent or whether that's something that needs to be reviewed. But I think that increasing the number of sales stations, that And making it not appointment only, those do have to deal with when the people are coming and going, and so that's a traffic and a parking issue. So those two definitely should be reviewed, and I question the vans being in Needham rather than Milford, and where the marijuana products are purchased from, whether that's really something that we should be reviewing in 8 months where it's for a limited purpose.
So I understand your question and your comments. Do you have other comments? And Natasha and Jean, I see your hands up, and I'm going to come back to you in a minute. But Paul, were there other comments that you had in the decision? And
No,
do you want to?
no,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay,
That's it.
good. Thank you. So, so first I saw Natasha had her hand up first, Jean. So I'm going to go to Natasha, and then I'll come to you. Natasha, go ahead.
I just have something quick just to make sure that I understand. It looks like on September 14th, the police said that they would have a major concern, with the increase of customers, but then, and the impacts to traffic. But then on Monday, September 19th, he had spoken to Attorney Smart, and he's amenable to allowing the changes proposed with a review in 6 months to address any impact, if any, to the area. Because from what I had heard is that they basically had a decrease of people coming to the location. So is that accurate?
It's
Yes, I have it in front of me, and it is accurate. Yes.
That's
And
what the chief
also,
said.
if I may respond to.
That was my only, that was my only question. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that part. Okay.
yes, but I do just Jean, 1
Change.
second for clarity though. I think that first comment was a question about the parking, and I think, Lee, that might have been at a time before the planning board took a vote to, I think, allow 18 parking spaces. So I think that there was some confusion, there was some concern between the police department and some neighbors, and also from the building commissioner, of what the parking on site would enable, and that a site visit occurred by the building commissioner. I don't know if it was by the police department, by the police chief, and then the planning board, on their guidance, resolved the 18 parking spots. So that was part of the issue. And Natasha, I think that relates in part to what you were saying. But Jean, the floor is yours.
Oh, I was only pointing out, because I have the correspondence in front of me, that it's exactly as Natasha said. There was an email from John
Schlittler, the police chief.
Schlittler, and on the 14th, raising some concerns on the increased traffic or increased patronage, which could lead to increased traffic. Then there was a response by Robert Smart on September 16th to the concerns that were raised. And in his response, he refers to Scott Thornton's follow-up traffic study, to the 18 parking spaces, that this is not recreational marijuana, that business volume has been down. Then John Schlittler responded, I spoke with Attorney Smart, and so I guess he had more than just the email. There was a discussion too. I am amenable to allowing the changes proposed with a review in 6 months. So I just thought, confirming what was said by reference to what I have right in front of me would be helpful.
So thank you for that clarification. I have other comments too, which I'll speak to in a moment.
And I have other comments.
Okay, Jean, you go ahead.
Yes, I want to agree with Paul. I had approached this, and I don't think I approached it carefully enough, with the idea that that we'll approve right away and let them do things that would be hard to undo. And once they start with item 4, allowing sales of marijuana products other than those cultivated at their Milford facilities, once they start dealing with cultivation, buying products that are cultivated elsewhere, that's a big effort on their part and kind of hard to undo, with streams of the products, making them available. So I don't see that it matters with regard to what we're concerned about. So I would move forth up to section 3.2 of things we're simply allowing. And then the same with item 6 on the delivery vans. Once they've made whatever changes they need to make to accommodate the delivery van on site, why do we care whether it goes back to Milford in 8 months? I don't understand why we would care about that. And although it's not probably a big burden on them to make that change, why do we even want it?
I think it is. I think they were saying that it was a significant burden, in fact, because those vans would otherwise go back, they would return to Milford empty, they have no product, and then it slows down their ability, to then bring the vans from Milford with or without product, probably without, come to Needham, load up the truck, and then thereafter go on their delivery run, and then return the van empty again, as otherwise they would have an empty van, but it saves them time. If it's 40 minutes to get back and forth between facilities, it does save them time.
No, I understand that, of course, but what I mean is, if we made it only temporary and then they had to undo it and bring the vans back to Milford, would that be a big burden? Just the physical relocation of the vans, because they might have, made alterations to the garage in order to accommodate the vans. So
I think all of
I just think, what's the point? Move item 6 also up to 3.2. Let them have the vans on site. What do we care?
So
I'm not saying
understand
anything more than I think Paul has said, that that was what he wanted. I agree.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what Paul is saying. And I understand, Artie, what you're advocating for as well. Paul, I'll come to you in a second. And all I'm saying, and I apologize if I'm not speaking clearly, is that clearly all of these items are designed to reflect a substantial change in their business practice to improve their business. And to speak to one point that Artie brought up a couple of times, well, why are we treating this differently? Which is a good question to ask, because this is a unique use in the town that has not happened before, and our own police department, as a function of public safety, in addition to the comments that we received from other commercial abutters and other area residents that that have identified other disturbances, that as a matter of course, do we want to shortchange the planning board's authority and ability, to modify temporary versus permanent any of these uses? That's the question that I think that's the critical question. And if you all decide that you do want to minimize the discretion of the board, including any other disturbances beyond parking and traffic, then so be it. I'm not going to step in your way, but I just want you to be aware that this is a different use. We have no other use like this in town, and I'm not commenting on the validity of the use, and I'm not commenting on the validity of the business, but I am making a distinction where as a matter of policy and practice, that in the future we will continue to diminish the planning board's ability and authority. Paul, Artie will come to you after, but Paul, you had your hand up.
Okay, thank you. So the reason why I said that the issue of the vans is something that I am questioning and not really saying it should definitely be moved is because it may have an impact on traffic early in the morning. I don't know. If the vans are already there, then it's, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, it definitely saves the petitioner's time in terms of loading the vans and making their deliveries. And so I don't think that affects parking. That doesn't really affect any other safety issues other than possibly traffic in the morning and when they're closing up. And probably when they're closing up is not as much of an issue. It certainly does save the petitioners a lot of time. It also saves gasoline if they have to go back and forth to Milford twice a day. And in these, we're all concerned about global climate change and what we can do to keep them from polluting the air with the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide coming out of the exhaust pipes because they're not traveling for an hour and a half every day. I'm willing to move it over to a permanent change. I think we should move over to a permanent change the question of where they acquire their product, because I don't think that has anything to do with the public safety. So that's where.
By the way, Paul, on the question of public safety, it's just a function of how much are we prepared to limit and reduce the scope of our own authority in these things. Artie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, related to both these items and so forth. Actually, mainly one of them. I can appreciate when this article first came to be is, we have some concerns of where the product may be, perhaps. I can understand when this first comes in, putting restrictions and wanting to make certain where all the safety standards coming within the state. So I can appreciate an aspect of that. I think we're well beyond that at this point. So I see no reason to be concerned about where they are acquiring the product. Related to the van, I don't understand the logic in limiting that at all in the first place, unless of course there was no place for them to park it at the current facility, but now there is. It makes absolutely no sense to require them to move the van from point A to point Z when it needs to be point A to begin with. That makes no sense for us to step on that whatsoever. They should feel free to be able to have the trucks what's going to be most effective for their business model at that time during the day, that particular week. They should be able to provide.
Understood. So I appreciate that. So you're comfortable to reduce the authority of the planning board, is that right?
I mean, it's lovely to put it that way. It's not reducing the authority. We shouldn't have. There's no reason for us to be burdened with where they're parking their truck, and there's no reason for us to be burdened of where they're getting the product from. This is regulatory.
Well, there is actually, Artie, for clarity, there is, because it's a substantive point before us, and the question that Paul raises, which is a good question, is a question of public policy. And the point of the review is to empower the planning board with enough discretion to make further modifications.
We don't need that discretion to decide where they're parking their truck. We don't need the discretion where the
because it's a specific relief requested, Artie.
And I'm perfectly happy moving it over to a point where it is not subject to review at the 8-month period. I'm perfectly happy not having to review that again. It seems unnecessary.
Okay, I appreciate your point, Paul.
Yeah, I raised my hand to ask Lee the question whether she remembers why we required them to store their trucks in Milford overnight, because I can't remember why we had that requirement. I know we had the requirement. I remember the requirement. I don't remember why.
Maybe they had no garage to park it in.
No, they had the garage.
Let's ask Lee.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't remember the foundation.
So we're going to put a pin in this. I'd like to put a pin in this part of it, and then continue with the comments that I had, and then we'll take all these pins out and finish our decision. So I wondered if we would, where we make mention of Cannabis Control Commission, and then we later say CCC, we don't actually define what the CCC is, where it's written in 1.5. So I thought either in 1.4, or we could do it in the third paragraph on page 1. We'd simply say, we're at the first citing, the Cannabis Control Commission, and then in bracket, hereinafter the quote capital CCC, unquote, and close bracket, that, you know, then there's clarity in what CCC is, because it's not other than by reference at 1.5. So I thought that was one change to make. In 1.6, on page 3, with a sentence that reads in the middle of the paragraph, this leaves designated appointment times unused, and then I was going to suggest adding and unable to be subsequently scheduled. And then in paragraph 1.8, at the last sentence, which reads, since the planning board special permit already allows Sira, I was going to suggest, or I suggest that we include, since the existing planning board special permit, to more clearly identify what we're referring to. And then in paragraph 1.9, there is a comment that says, this restriction causes, and this is one of our findings, this restriction causes significant operational problems. I think we should, before that, say, the petitioner claims this restriction causes significant operational problems. Because we're not asserting that it did.
Good point.
There is in further on in paragraph 1.9, we're allowed to maintain and operate 2 vans. Should we clarify that we mean, although Attorney Smart uses the word maintain and operate, and I think that's where Lee sourced those words from, maintenance would be a different use. If they're, if they're making repairs on their vans, if they're changing tires and changing oil, and I don't know if we need to add further clarity on that we're allowed to hold and operate 2 vans as opposed to maintain, because there are other similar uses to car maintenance in that geography. We've already talked about the comment that I raised earlier today to Lee about preserving the appropriate discretion or authority of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Then I think the next comment I had in to grant the following requested permits. Right. I apologize. So to the 2017 special permit for a limited time of 8 months, the petitioner is able to submit an application for any requested extension no sooner than 6 months from the date of this decision. Because I think we want a 6-month review period, and so instead of within, no sooner than. And I think that for a limited time of 8 months, the petitioner is able to submit an application. It's not that we're necessarily requiring them to do so. The other changes that I had have been made in the paragraph.
I think Adam, I think the 6-month requirement is the time period by which they have to make their application if they want to extend.
Right. I agree with that. And what I'm saying is they can't make an application sooner than 6 months.
No, it's the other way. We don't want it to be later than 6 months.
So in 2 months, they can apply for a review?
Well, they can apply for the review. We're not going to hear it until 8 months have gone by, or well,
6 months, 6 months, six months.
So I just want to be clear that the review period is 6 months.
Yeah, we'd have to review it in 6 months.
But is there a clock,
Okay.
Lee, if they make an application, the day after we approve this? Is there a clock?
Lee, you're muted.
Lee, you're
you're
still
muted.
muted.
Sorry, yes, there is a clock, but I don't think they'll be making an application on something where they know our intent is to have something operational for 6 months and that we're just gonna turn around and deny it. I think that's an unlikely outcome. I mean, there is a clock. I mean, once they file the application, within 65 days, you're supposed to schedule a hearing.
65 days, okay.
So I think we
Okay.
need,
Could we say,
Okay.
but not sooner than 4 months, within 6 months from the date of this decision, but not sooner than 4
Yep.
months from the date of this decision?
Yeah, because Adam, if they can't make the application for 6 months,
excuse me.
and then we've got 65 days to schedule a hearing, that's beyond the 8 months that the,
So then 5.5
I would
months?
think that.
They can submit an application no sooner than 5 months or 5.5 months?
Maybe 5 months makes more
5
sense.
months, 5 months.
5 months, okay, not
5
4 months, 5
But
months.
that the review period itself, so Lee, we have 65 days. Are those calendar days or business days?
Business days.
Whoa.
Whoa, that ticks away.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It is calendar days. It is calendar days.
So we have 65 calendar days. So we just don't schedule the hearing as a matter of practice. And we really want the police comments after the 6-month mark. So
Correct.
so 5 months gives us another 30 days. They apply in 5 months, then we've got 30 more days to get to the 6th month. And then we need comments back from the police chief and any other board, but I think it's really likely just the police department and public safety. And then we have enough time to give notice for the hearing in less than the 65 days from the date of their application at the 5th month. Does that timing work for you, Lee?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Good. Thanks, Paul, for the clarification. I'm just at paragraph 3.2 in our conditions. We will have to modify those dates, and we'll have to modify the dates in the activation clause with our vote. And same with 3.3. Those were my comments. So now the only unresolved issue is with respect to Paul's list of, sorry, I've got a diabetes alarm going off here, but I can suspend that. Thanks for your patience. So Paul, I think you've framed it for our review that you're proposing the permanent conditions be the change of name, the change of authority that governs their operation, the vans not having to go to Milford, and the product supply, the expanded supply of product, are all permanent. And that what would remain as temporary is their move from 5 sales counters to 7 sales stations and the appointment provision, the removal of the appointment provision. Do I
Correct.
understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll vote last. Let's do this by straw vote. Paul,
Do we need a motion to, for those changes, or just?
we will after this. This is just a straw poll to see where the board is on this matter. So Paul, I presume that that's what you're advocating for, is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Artie, I presume that you concur?
Correct.
Okay. Jean, do you concur?
Yes.
And Natasha? All right.
Yes.
So, for the record, I understand the changes that you're advocating for. I do see that the issue of the vans and the issue of the product supply, they have specifically come to for relief on. And I do see, as a matter of public policy, that we're effectively shortchanging the planning board in 6 months from, excluding those provisions. And personally, I don't think that is an appropriate reduction in our authority, but I'm not going to stand in the board's way. I just want us to acknowledge, though, that is the impact of that decision. So now,
That's putting words in our mouth. I don't put words in our mouth that we're shortchanging the planning board, because we kind of gave guidance to Lee as far as what we want to review in 8, let's call it 8 months. And we decided we do not want to review some of these other items because it's unnecessary. So we're keeping under review the things associated with the volume of people coming in and how they're scheduling the appointments. We're not shortchanging anything.
Well, you recognize that we're reducing our authority, correct?
We're not reducing our authority.
Adam, I'm going to disagree with you, Adam, because I think we always have the authority, if somebody comes in and complains that there's too much traffic, or that they've been using more than 18 parking spaces, and so the parking spaces are being affected. And let's say the reason that they're using excess parking spaces is because they're parking the vans in the parking lot during the day.
Yes.
We still have the authority, when somebody comes before us, somebody actually would go to the building commissioner and make a complaint about the traffic, make a complaint about the parking, possibly go to the police department and make a complaint about people smoking in the middle of the street on Franklin Street. And so it comes to us and we ask the petitioner to come in and speak with us. I think we still have the authority to modify our permit at any time in order to alleviate whatever it is that has been a problem that has been created. And if we decide that the reason that the parking situation is bad or the traffic situation is bad is because the vans are there overnight, we can decide to amend our permit. We'd have to have hearings, but we can decide to amend our permit so that they have to store their vans in Milford, as an example.
So we can revoke that at any time?
Yeah, well, if we follow the proper procedures.
Yes, of course.
What we're setting up here is, what are we going to review as a matter of course in 6 to 8 months?
Okay, so I'm satisfied. I appreciate that discussion, and I'm also grateful for the opportunity to get clarity. Thank you. So Shall I have, can I have a motion to accept, wait, should we have a motion first to accept the revised relief and then a secondary decision for
Right.
the decision itself?
So let me make the motion for the relief. Okay? So I move that this board grant the following requested amendments to the 2017 special permit permanently. First, by authorizing the activities permitted at 29-37 Franklin Street, Needham, to be conducted by Sira Naturals, Inc., DBA Air, or Air. Second, by requiring the petitioner to comply with the requirements of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission in addition to the requirements of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
As applicable.
As applicable, thank you. Fourth, by allowing sales of medical marijuana products other than those cultivated and processed at the petitioner's Milford facility. And sixth, by eliminating the requirement that the delivery vans for home deliveries be housed at the petitioner's main facility in Milford, and by allowing 2 vans to be kept in the garage at the facility. And I further move that the board vote to grant the following requested amendments to the 2017 special permit for a limited time of 8 months until June 18, 2023, with an application to be submitted for any requested extension no sooner than 5 months of this decision, parentheses, by March 18, 2023, colon. Third, by eliminating the, quote, appointment dash only, end quote, operational requirement for this facility. And fifth, by allowing an increase in the maximum number of sales stations from 5 to 7. I believe that's it. That's the motion.
Paul, I'm going to just simply say before you get a second that that is a deftly proposed motion. Do we have a second?
I've been practicing law for 47 years, Adam. It's about time I'm able to do this.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's about time you put some of that into practice, Paul.
So we have a motion, so moved by Paul, a second by Artie. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, please.
Yes. Sure.
I just want to make sure that I followed the changes. If I'm looking at the write-up of our vote on page 4, therefore the board voted 5-0. Are the changes limited to, in the 4th line after Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission would be inserted in addition to the requirements of, and then the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And the other change.
As applicable.
Right.
Okay, as applicable, right?
Right.
And then down on, for the 4th item, the insertion of the word medical.
Correct.
Then the deletion of the 7th item.
Correct.
And is that all?
And then moving
The other 2 items will be
items from the second second section, which is temporary, to the first section, which is permanent.
Right.
We're moving the vans and we're moving.
Oh, yeah, for a special permit for a limited time of 8 months. Oh, there it is, right in our vote. Yes, and we wanted to move those around. All right, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
very good. Yes, Alex has a question.
I just want to make sure, is it okay that I renumber them so that it's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the permanent and then 5, 6 in the temporary?
Yes.
It just
Yeah.
makes more sense to
We'll
me.
reorganize it, Alex, so it accomplishes the same.
I've got it here, Lee. I just wanted to make sure that that was okay. I'm redlining it right now.
Excellent.
That makes sense.
I'm so glad you're doing that in the moment because I can't imagine this conversation
Me too.
being clear. So that is a motion. We have a second. We've had our discussion. I'll come to the vote. In alphabetical order, Paul Alpert,
Aye.
Artie Crocker,
Aye.
Jean McKnight,
Aye.
Natasha Spada.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We have adopted a motion for the relief accordingly.
May I just point out that that was not alphabetical order because the Spada comes before McKnight.
Oh, shoot. You're right.
We're co-chairs. We're okay. I'm okay.
I'm so sorry. That was just a goof on my part. You're right. Thanks for calling me out.
I try to do that as often as I can, Adam.
And you're rarely wrong, Paul. So I'm grateful when I'm corrected.
When I was chair, I always.
Really? No, I'm never wrong, Adam.
I always just went by where the pictures of the people were on my screen.
I know.
That's how I do it too, Gene.
So now let us discuss a motion to accept our decision dated today with the revisions that we have discussed and accepted.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Paul, a
made the
second
motion.
by Jean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will come to the vote in proper alphabetical order. Paul Alpert,
Aye.
Artie Crocker,
Aye.
Natasha Espada,
Aye.
Jean McKnight,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. We have completed our decision. I do see, Lee, that Bob's Attorney Smart is in the attendees. Have you?
Oh, okay.
Have you? From time to time, it's not uncommon for the board to have a conversation with the applicant about the changes that we're making. Is that?
Bob saw the draft that you reviewed tonight, and before you changed anything, he was fine with it. So I'm sure he'll be happy that you gave him more things permanently than temporarily.
Yes.
He was happy with the draft that was originally presented to you.
Well, he can thank Paul, probably not me, though.
And just a reminder to sign it in the office. Thank you.
Yes. Fortunately, I'm here. I can do that. So that's good.
May I just quickly ask, will that be available for signing tomorrow morning, or should I wait until Thursday?
If the office is open, it's available.
Okay, it will be there tomorrow morning.
Yes, it will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think I need a 5-minute recess to deal with a diabetes malfunction. I need insulin. My levels are rising too rapidly, and I need to fill a new pump. Can I have a motion to recess for 5 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you for the recess. I'm now back in action, and the insulin seems to be working, so I'm grateful for the indulging. Thank you in that recess. So the next item on our agenda is continued discussion on our goals and so forth. In the days that since we last spoke about this, which I guess was what, Tuesday? Is that right? I don't remember. The days blur together. Today's Tuesday. I guess that was Thursday. I spoke to the chair of the Climate Action Committee, and Lee, what I would like you to do is to send an invite, please, to Hank Half, and to copy Stephen Frail and Nick Hill And I suppose, and I can send you offline. I was going to announce it here, but I'll send it offline or give it to both you and Alex. The chair is Stephen Frail and the vice chair Nick Hill. For them, I'd like them to come before us in the next 4 weeks, and I'd like them to provide a presentation of 20 or 25 minutes in length of where they're at with with their own plan, with their action plan, and what initiatives they would like us to advance, or where we can help them advance. I'm mindful of our clock, that we would really need to be in motion and have effectively a draft, some draft changes by the end of the year. So I'd like to bring them in the next month or so, and then we can move forward from there and identify what changes we might be able to advance in the short term. Does that make sense?
Could you give an example of changes, Adam? You're speaking of zoning bylaw amendments?
So so some examples may be adding some definitions for some specific greenhouse gas reduction technologies. So we would add some definitions, and then we would consider, I'd like to see us add the definitions and then modify our dimensional requirements in any and all districts so that they do not include the mechanical items that we would then define, which are the greenhouse gas reduction technologies.
So Adam, can I interrupt you for 1 second, just to let you know? So I'm the planning board member of the CAPC, working with Stephen Frail and the rest of the group. And I am in charge of I'm the chair of the working group for zoning, specifically the items that you're mentioning right now.
Okay, great.
We just had a kickoff meeting last night. Artie is there. He's leading one of the other groups.
The Natural Resources Group.
And so basically we have 3 months. So within I have a working group, and that working group consists of the building inspector. It's Justin Savanino. Is that how you say his last name? Who's the assistant engineer, town engineer. It includes Lee, and it includes Oscar Mertz. And so we're going to have 3 meetings in the next 3 months to discuss exactly what you're talking about. We're going to be looking at other towns and looking at their zoning, and looking at their climate action plans to see what they were able to achieve, and then get back together as a larger group to make 3 to 5 recommendations to be implemented, to move forward. So that's happening, except it's probably the recommendations will be given in January. So just to give you a heads up that we're already in the work, it's already in the works, and we're doing all of our research in the next 3 months.
So that's great. I thought when my conversations with Steve, it seemed as though there might be a couple of things that we could get ready for May. If I understand your time frame, and I don't want to interfere in your work, so the consequence of that time frame, if I understand correctly though, is that if you're resolved with your recommendations for some zoning changes or regulatory changes, that if you complete your recommendations by January, that doesn't really make them viable, because we need to turn those into draft bylaws by then, to be able to hold hearings and speak to the select board, the warrant committee, and have them refer it back to us and hold the hearings. I don't know that we could make it, unless we might be able to make this special based on the discussion that we had I think, last week.
I guess the question that I have is, this is led, this whole CAPC is led by the select board, right? And so there are people from the FinCom and other groups that are within this group. And if we're looking at other bylaws from other towns as examples, could we, as a group, recommend something in January that could still happen in April? Lee, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I feel like we're just getting started, and it would be short-sighted to just put together something right now without doing all the research.
Yeah, I think we want the research and the recommendations that we're going to implement, and we'll have to, I think it would be very tight to get it done in the spring. I mean, I think it's possible that maybe something, if it's really low hanging and easy, when the recommendations come out in January, could be done at a special. And I think it's probably more practical to be targeting the fall.
Okay.
However, I think what's this is leading me to believe is that not only are we looking for those 3 to 5 items, but also if we can also gather what the bylaws are for the other towns, we can have a leg up on creating any bylaw changes, or right? Because we don't have to reinvent it. We can just, but I feel like with this moment of research, of dividing all this research amongst our groups and getting all that information is pretty critical in making informed decisions.
I wasn't meaning to, and I wasn't meaning to fall outside of your, of your program, and I do think that that you have an established rationale and a reason for that, and I support and accept that. When I took a look at the MAPC report, I think from maybe November of 2021, and then there was a summary of some action items that seemed that those, regardless of what other jurisdictions were doing, it seemed as though there were some items that we could, potentially a solar bylaw, some other things that I do want to see us on this topic of environmental reform is, as a matter of our, I think we can do it for use, and certainly for site plan special permit, that we add as an additional criteria the environmental impact of the project. So for instance, if a project is coming to us that has no LEED certification, that it's a commercial development that is, but doesn't generate any greenhouse gas reduction and doesn't employ any of those technologies, and they're asking for the maximum FAR, maybe there's a scenario where we don't grant an FAR, as opposed to another applicant, another project who is implementing a number of green standards and increasing and adopting greater greenhouse gas reduction technologies. They're asking for the maximum FAR. I might be more inclined. Jean, you have your hand up.
I want to ask how the likelihood of the state having a new stretch code in the near future. I mean, we have a new administration coming in. There's been talk of the issuance of a new stretch code. Not clear exactly when that's going to happen, and I wonder if Natasha could speak on that, because that's certainly an element of this work, and if it's still a little up in the air, that's another factor.
We thought that the stretch code was going to happen at the beginning of the year, so in 2 months, 2.5 months, but we think it's probably going to be pushed to second or third quarter of next year. That's speculation. We thought it was going to happen because some of my projects were trying to get permitting before to be grandfathered in, even though there was an area for grandfathering, just because they were so far along in design. So Adam, you know what, we have our first meeting, hopefully at the beginning of November. So I think that some of the things that you're saying, we're researching as well. I think once we have that first meeting, we can report back and see if there are
Perfect.
things that feel like low-hanging
Yep.
fruit.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's a great
Because-
great suggestion.
Because everyone in the working group, I tried to keep the working group small, because as we've learned from the housing working group, the larger it is, the more difficult it is for people to get together, and so we might have people that we might reach
agree.
out to in addition to
Yep.
our smaller group. But within our group, Dave Roach has so much experience already with some initiatives that were happening in town where he has experience with these things, and then Justin has experience from Newton and other areas. So we have practical experience, we have design experience, we have, planning experience. So I feel like we just need to
I agree. That's fine.
vet it from all sides to make sure that we can be successful.
I like it. You're right. And I defer to your good judgment there. Thank you.
But what I'll do is, I'll make sure that at every planning meeting, we give an update.
One of those
Because,
things that's helpful. And we certainly have that in our agendas for planning board member and planning director reports. One of the items that that might be on your low-hanging fruit near term might be a bylaw amendment that would enable photovoltaic panels, solar panels, by right in town and not require a special permit. We're having a hearing coming up on 140 Kendrick, and the application is only as a result of a special permit to put solar panels on the roof. And I'd like to see
Right.
us administratively to avoid that requirement.
I think it also would help us in general, and I think the housing working group's work is also gonna help us in general. If we change any of the bylaws, then it gives us a pathway to be able to review projects, easily or in an easier way, if they do get adopted, versus us trying to make recommendations that may or may not be adopted by the different projects. It feels like we should look at, the town holistically and see how we can create these avenues for sustainability that then are more, in my mind, more equitable.
Good. I don't have an update on these other items. I have a call in to our town council to talk about some of these structural reform items. So, does anyone else have any other comments on or additional suggestions on our?
Yeah. I mean, going into the future, talking about solar, it's something obviously I have a lot of experience with. I would like to see something in the zoning that gives homeowners a right to have solar on their homes, whether they're in a homeowners association or not in a homeowners association. Right now, I'm particularly referring to a homeowners association where they can restrict it, but the restriction is not coming in the form of you can't have solar. It's coming in the form of you can't modify anything outside your house, and all it takes is one person to object, and all of a sudden someone can't put solar on their unit. And so I think that needs to be looked at. I've had a number of people, some people say that it really bothers them, and they're looking to move because you get into situations where they lose that right to reduce their greenhouse gases when one person objects. So at some point in the future.
Artie, I question the legal ability of the town in a zoning amendment to limit the authority and the discretion of a homeowners association to make their own rules.
I agree.
Okay. Well, okay, I don't know obviously I don't know for a fact whether we can or can't. Let me put it this way, if we're giving a builder the authority to build, certain amount of units, we can certainly have the authority to say they cannot deny a homeowner's right to do something. For example, solar. If we're
At the time of approval of a subdivision, for
Correct.
example.
Correct. That's what I'm referring to. I'm sorry, my apologies, Paul. That's what I'm referring to. I don't see us going, I don't think we can go backwards. I'm talking about anything going forward is what I'm referring to.
Okay, when there's a subdivision plan in front of us.
Yeah.
Where there's gonna be a homeowners association, and so we've got some discretion.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Thank you, Paul, for bringing that up.
Designate what will be in the homeowners association documents. Interesting thought.
Jean,
Yes.
you had your hand up as well?
Yes, at the long-range planning meeting last Thursday, there were two things that I mentioned that I thought we would want to have relatively quick action, in the next, in the 2023 annual town meeting rather than way off in 2024 annual town meeting. What I'm thinking of two things. Working with the Zoning Board of Appeals to change our zoning bylaw with regard to three-car garages. And that is something we actually might be able to do in the next few months and even have on for this 2022 annual town meeting. But I just wonder what the process would be. Should we invite the chair of the ZBA? Should we work through staff, with Lee working with Daphne? What will be the process for moving forward on that? Or do we just go ahead and make some recommendations and send them to the ZBA? What do you think, Lee? You're muted, Lee.
I would suggest, we could either bring him into the board, or if there was, one or two of you that were interested in working with myself and Daphne and John Schneider. I don't know why we couldn't arrange a meeting during the day, find out what his concerns and needs are, and then come back and report to the board about some recommended changes to address it.
I'm happy to work with you on that.
And since I've already begun the work, and I'm interested, I'd be glad to also do that.
Do we have a draft?
Their working group is taking up so much time right now, but a daytime meeting just to get it started.
Sure. I mean, Daphne had done that early work, and we can certainly loop John in, and we can just kind of sit down and talk about what the issues are and what some of the strategies might be to solve the problem.
And
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, just slightly off topic, Jean, quick question, and also you can, Natasha. Is the housing working group, do you have to abide by the open meeting laws?
Yes.
Yes, oh,
Yes.
definitely. Every one of our subgroups, we've posted our meetings.
Yes.
The only reason I ask is because in the Climate Action Committee, our working groups have to abide by the open meeting laws, and so that came, initially we were thinking we did not have to, but I just want.
No, we do. And I
all
think
committees.
we do, and we have to write meeting notes.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
And, we have team agenda planning meetings with our staff. By we, I mean Natasha and I, and we don't consider those agenda planning meetings to be subject to the open meeting law. And the same thing is true of the planning board.
Chair, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So-
Chair, Vice Chair.
And we don't have quorum either, it's just Jean and I.
Yes.
So I just, to move back here, Jean, did you ever draft a zoning bylaw amendment to
For
enable?
the three-car garage?
Yes.
The three-car garages? I'd have to look back up my materials. I don't think I did. I think I listed or put up in a memo some ideas, but I
Okay.
didn't actually draft an amendment.
So
But, that's within my skill set, so.
given the work that you've done, I'd certainly be interested in seeing that through. And given the work that you've already done on it, clearly it's going to be very helpful. I just want to get a bit of a straw poll from the rest of our colleagues. Does everybody support a three-car garage by right? in the, or not requiring a ZBA special permit in SRA?
And may I add,
I think we're talking SRB.
SRB, it's a
I
lot.
apologize.
Right.
Yes.
SRB.
and I am not necessarily personally recommending by right with no controls. I think we have to consider whether there are certain circumstances where it's sure, why not? Like if the third garage is on the side of the house or at the rear of the house rather than right in the front. And those are the kinds of things we'll want to discuss. There may be circumstances under which it should still be a special permit.
Okay.
The only thing that goes through my mind is this something that's, and I'm fine if you guys say yes, I appreciate that. Is this something, does this take priority over some of the other things we may want to bring to the May town meeting? That's all. Is it important enough to override some of the things we may want to bring to the town meeting? That's all.
Good comment.
I'm only concerned because we told the ZBA 2 or 3 years ago we'd work on this. And we were reminded several months ago that we said we would, and I feel badly that we haven't.
Well, I think there's a backstory to that, though. I think too that initially John wanted to do it, and then because he had a lot of cases, and then it became not a huge priority because the caseload went down and he wasn't so concerned, and then it resurfaced. So it's kind of been, it hasn't been a huge. Don't feel totally guilty. There was kind of a change of direction at midpoint.
And hopefully we can, we can do more than one item at a time.
May I just put my 2 cents worth in here?
Yes,
quickly
please, Paul.
My recollection is basically what Lee said, only I'd go a little bit further. I'd say that after we had some really good discussions at the planning board, my recollection is that we did go back to John Schneider and ask him what he thought of what we had discussed, and he never got back to us.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and so, it wasn't totally there. I also think that we've done so much work on this already, as has the ZBA, and it has been a few years. I don't see why we can't do this in addition to our pressing items that we want to get done quickly.
Agreed.
Art. I don't think this is going to take precedence over something else.
And I don't think it's going to be particularly controversial either, as far as bringing something before the town meeting. That will take a lot of time.
Well, I don't know that we ever have something in front of town meeting.
I appreciate your optimism, Gene. So returning back to our agenda, I don't see we have minutes. I'll come back to reports in a minute. The correspondence that I recall we received
Aren't you moving on too quickly?
What's that? Sorry, say it again?
Aren't you? Isn't there a possibility to consider, like in response to what Paul said, and Artie too, I think, aren't there other things that we want to move forward in this in what we're calling long-range planning to try to get before town meeting next year? Have we finished that discussion?
I think we had that discussion last Thursday.
Yeah,
we did.
Well,
Okay.
I'd love to see the possibility of us bringing a tree bylaw. I know
we already have that. We already have that on the list. We already talked about that last week. We have a plan to move that forward.
And ADUs, right?
Well, ADUs, I think, is the other piece I think that we could do this spring. And I think it would be a shame if we didn't do it. It's already been delayed.
This spring, 2022. Really, that'd be great. So many people are asking for that.
Not 2022, 2023.
Excuse me, 2022.
So there will be others, and what I would like to see us do is every 3 weeks, us as a planning board, take the time to consider these and other items that we'll be able to advance in various shapes. So I certainly encourage all members of the public, if they have comments and questions about either any of the policies of the planning board or practices of the planning board. If they would like to see reform, on our policies and our bylaws, we would strongly encourage you submit your emails to the board, and we may invite you to come in to talk to us. Our email address, I think, is planning@needhamma.gov. I finally got that right. So for anyone listening and watching tonight, our email address again is planning@needhamma.gov, and we strongly encourage you to participate in the process. We welcome your participation, and any zoning reform you'd like to see, please do comment and follow us along in our process, and we would love to have you participate, here in person too as we move forward. So now with that, Jean, because this is not the only time that we will discuss this, but we'll make sure to put it again on the schedule in the short term. I don't recall we have minutes for tonight. The correspondence that we have received is a letter from Town Council dated October 12, 2022, written to the Finance Committee with respect to the brew pub and microbrewery zoning, Article 8 at this special town meeting in October, in which a question came up from a member of the Finance Committee whether the zoning adheres to the uniformity requirement of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, subsection 4. And it is the opinion of Town Council that this article remains compliant with the uniformity requirement. So the other items I saw for correspondence included, I think from the city of Newton, some ZBA files, announcements and notices. Lee, did you want to speak to those of note?
No, I just put those in for informational purposes for the board, so they understood some of the projects that were going forward in Newton.
Thank you very much. And I don't think there was other correspondence. Am I missing anything? So now we come to the report from the planning director and board members. First, Lee, I'll turn to you, and then I'll come to the board members. Lee, do you have any reports for us at this time, or Alex?
Well, sure. I just want you. Well, we had the meeting with the select board on the presentation of the housing plan last week, and the housing working group is now scheduled to meet. I think it's a week from this coming week. What day was that, Alex? I didn't write it down on my calendar. But I think at that meeting we're going to review the comments we got and prepare for the community workshop. Also, just so you know, the departmental budget is due next Tuesday. So I've been spending a lot of my time putting all that together, which is the planning board's or the department's submittal for funding for the next fiscal year, which is going to include not only the departmental budget, but is also going to include going forward with the small repair grant program and a change in how we actually fund the housing specialist, because we're no longer able to fund that position out of CPC, given a legal ruling that came down from town council. So I'm working on that because the draft budget is due next week, Tuesday. And also we have town meeting coming up next week, Monday. So historically we've met before town meeting, just in case something comes up. So I wanted to talk to you about how you'd like to facilitate that. If we want to meet maybe late afternoon on Zoom prior to town meeting, Alex and I can set that up. What would work for you?
We usually meet in a basement room of the town hall, but can we have an in-person meeting that we've advertised as an in-person meeting that doesn't have any Zoom component? We can do that under the law, can't we?
Yes, we can do that. That would be difficult for me. That's why I was suggesting, that was why I was asking whether or not the other alternative would be available for you.
24th, the Monday. I have, a meeting from 2 to 4 at least, that day in Wellesley at my church. I'm the chair of the committee, or what we call hearth keeper, silly words, of a committee that's meeting that afternoon, on Monday.
Which day is this?
Monday, the day of town meeting, and I am
But
tied up from 2 to 4, and then I have to get home from Wellesley, so it's really 4:30. It's really at 1:30 to 4, excuse me.
Can you remind me the date? I know it's Monday, but what?
The 24th.
It's the 24th. So we have one article on the warrant, which is the brewery article.
Any comments in my presentation, anyone?
Did you add anything in there? Remember I was talking about, it's important to talk about objections. I'm talking about objections. Has anything been added about talking about objections?
So I think like we talked about, I spoke to a number of, I think I spoke to town council, and I spoke to our communication information officer and some other town officials, and I think our job is to act as the proponent and to.
So you're adding no objections. So you're adding no objections, which is important. I mean, I said I'd work with you on this, and I made a couple of comments, but it's important for the public to have you talk about objections and the reasons why. The reasons, the pros and cons, the reasons why it's okay. For example, the reasons why it's okay. The wording in there about the entertainment inside. Why is it okay to not the inverse? Why it's okay not to have the inverse? It's important to talk about that. So nothing's been changed. Nothing's been changed in the presentation. Just stick to the same. I'm going to phrase it this way: stick to the same game plan. I object to that to the town very much so that the game plan being is only talk about the pros, never talk about the cons. I object to that from a public standpoint. It's not. I don't find it very. I find it very disingenuous when we don't talk about the pros and cons. It's not our job to defeat our article, but it's our job to inform the public of why we're doing certain things. Like why we didn't put in it. Why we put in it the wording that live entertainment inside is allowed, and what that means as far as not having the outside entertainment.
I think
because I support the article, but I want to inform the public of what's going on.
I think it's impossible to predict any and all objections. I think that if people have comments on the article and questions, that they'll raise that at town meeting. They may not have any, and we've used our best judgment in following our ordinary process that included opportunities and for public comment in the zoning bylaw. We were sensitive to that, and we can certainly speak to any questions that come up. There is a frequently asked questions section as well, which is posted on our website, I think, Alex, relating to the article. So I think it's difficult as a matter of practice, and I think the role of a proponent is to present a dispassionate proposal, which is to say, to lay out what the changes to the zoning bylaw are, and here we're changing the uses, and then we're changing the locations, and that's the core information, and the origin of this.
Yeah, but the best way to success is for definitely the best way for the democratic process and success is to make sure we address things. We're not talking about addressing every possible scenario. And the
Why not?
Because you just said it's impossible to address every possible scenario.
So how do you choose which one?
Let me finish. So I'm not talking about addressing every possible scenario. I'm talking about the ones that are our best guess what some objections to be. That's what anything should always be. What are some of the objections, and address them in advance to the public of what's going on, and give our best answer of why we believe these objections, why this article does not create an obstacle. And here's an objection. Here's why it's okay. Here's why it still works. So that's our responsibility as well.
What objections are you talking about?
I'm simply talking about, and again, I'm not talking about anything big. And I still support.
I'm just talking about.
I'm talking about something as simple as, why is there language in there that says live entertainment is allowed inside? Does that mean, for example, does that mean there's no live entertainment allowed outside? That's all I'm talking about.
Artie, if somebody wants to question that, they can question it on town meeting. But we have time constraints, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We have a presentation. We're allowed to give a presentation by video, and then if you saw
the moderator, town moderator.
Right, the moderator's rules, we can present another 5 minutes. Now, if we're gonna go through and try to find every possible objection.
That's not what I'm talking about.
That somebody might make for us to address, that's not how you present an argument, Marty. That's, Artie. That's not how you, that's not how you win somebody over.
Well,
I understand that you think it is, but we're presenting what we've already determined after having hearings, after having open meetings, where town meeting members and other town people had the ability to be at our meetings, had the ability to be at the public hearing, and there were plenty of people at the public hearing, and we heard many comments, and we addressed them, and we even changed our proposed bylaw because of it, and the floor of town meeting, to get into that and spend a half hour to start talking about what we think might possibly be objections by people is, no, we just don't have the time to do it. Otherwise, we'll be there for a week and a half.
Okay, number one, I support the article. I'm sure it'll do fine. Okay, number one. Number two, this article in the presentation is fairly short as it stands. It's not very long. Number three, it is always good practice. Always, we all know, Paul, you know this. I'm sorry, I shouldn't put words in the mouth. I believe it is standard practice to talk about objections and then to answer them, because they're going to be there. I think it's standard practice to talk about something, why something's done a certain way. That way, people know in advance, before town meeting, of why something is done. It's not the end of the world that it's not being talked about, but I do object to the fact that it is standard practice to always hide. I'm going to use the word hide. It is standard practice I'm going to use the word hide objections. It is not our job to get this through town meeting no matter what it takes. That's not our job. Our job is to educate them. Here's our article. Here's why we want to do it. Here are some things that we do find are going to be questions, and here's why we still feel it's the correct thing to do. That's our job. Our job is to present the information, hopefully we will get a yes vote. That's our job.
We have done that in open meetings that are open to the public, and for which we have recordings that people can listen to. We had we had the open hearing where we heard objections, and then we followed up with a meeting where we discussed those items, and we had our discussions about why we made certain decisions, why we decided to make changes, and why we decided to not make changes. And to do that on the floor of town meeting takes a lot of time.
Yeah, but that's not what we're doing.
If somebody wants to find that information, it's available. And if they choose to not.
Artie, you've made your point. You've made your point. It sounds like you haven't even seen the presentation. If you want to if you,
Adam, you sent me the presentation. I made a couple of comments on the dates, and I looked at it, and I thought it was a good presentation, and I made some comments that I thought we should add. I'm sorry, why are you laughing, Adam? I'm not sure, why are you laughing?
because on the one hand, you've acknowledged that you agreed and accepted the presentation, and then on the other hand, now suddenly you're saying that while you agreed with it and it's good, that you want to make changes.
As stated, if you were listening as stated, I said it was a good presentation. I made the comments that I thought we should add a couple of objections and answered a couple of objections. So that's what
We're
I
asking
stated.
you which objections you want him to answer, and you haven't come up with them.
Yes, I did. Of course I did.
One.
Yeah,
Whether
that-
it's live
yeah.
entertainment outside instead of inside.
Yes, that was the main
That is such an insignificant issue.
That was the main thing.
Artie,
That was
Artie, you and I talked about that offline because someone had asked you a question about it, and you had a conversation with town council about that. I understand, and you and I talked about that, and you reported back to the town meeting member, which I think is a phenomenal execution of our town democracy and our role as town meeting members. If people have other additional objections, because that objection has been satisfied, you were satisfied with the answer with it, as you told me in that conversation. So if we can't anticipate other objections that people may have, and we'll have to address them on town floor.
If it's not clear, the main thing I'm objecting to right now is the fact that we think we should never address objections in our proposals. That's what it sounds like I'm being told. And in my opinion, that is the incorrect way to present an article, to never present objections. That's what I'm talking about. I understand we can't spend a lot of time doing it. I understand it's not our job to defeat our article, okay? But I object to the fact that we should never put objections.
Objection noted.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's all I care about.
Can we get back to trying to set a time?
Yes,
for our
thank you,
meeting on meeting day? I propose 5 p.m. Will that work for everyone for a quick Zoom meeting?
I
just want to confirm.
I might be a little after 5. It might be closer to 5:15 or 5:30. I have to take my son to a doctor's appointment.
Well, then how
which
about
is
5:30?
What's that?
How about 5:30 for everyone?
As long as the doctor's not delayed, it should be fine.
I need to check with my husband because that's my pickup day. He usually works later. I can text him
Well, how
right
about-
now, but if we do earlier in the day, I'm definite, or a little later, I'm definite. But that's a time where I can't confirm without checking with him.
I'm good in the
How about
morning.
noon?
What's that?
Noon, 12 p.m., noon.
That should be fine for me.
Does that work for others?
What day are you talking? I'm sorry. What day are you talking?
Monday.
This coming Monday?
Yeah,
The
basically.
24th, right? I can do noon to 12:30.
Basically, Artie, what we need to do is, we need to open our meeting and then suspend our meeting without adjourning,
Mm-hmm.
so that, if we need to
Sure.
discuss things and have a vote on things during town meeting as a planning board,
Mm-hmm.
because those of us who will be there will be sitting together.
Mm-hmm.
We have a planning board meeting that has been posted and, on which we can do it, so.
I'm open on
Monday at noon works for me. Noon, 12:15 maybe, because I have a Zoom meeting that ends around 11:45.
12:15 would work better.
Yeah.
So, are you able to send out, Alex is gonna send out a Zoom invite?
Yeah.
And then lastly, now that we've resolved that item, Artie, if you're aware of other objections to our zoning bylaw, it would be helpful as a proponent if you could write those objections up and then also write some notes to be able to address those objections. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll think, if there's anything else I can think about, I'll think of it and I'll send you something.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Are we talking 12:15 or 12 on Monday? No.
12:15.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting it on my calendar because I'm expecting I'll get something from Alex.
Happening as we speak.
Yep.
Wonderful. Unless we have any other business before us.
Yeah, I would like to raise an issue about town meeting, about the Foster property.
Oh, yes, good.
Because this is kind of spiraling. I'm not going to say it's spiraling out of control, but it's certainly spiraling. And I'm just wondering whether we, as a planning board, want to take a position for town meeting. In my mind, we've got two elements. And even though there's one element in front of town meeting, which is funding the potential purchase of conservation land or open space, because it hasn't been designated as conservation land. That's really what's in front of town meeting, but neighbors seem to feel that the 70-unit complex is in front of town meeting. And to some extent, as a practical matter, it kind of is. My thought is that as a planning board, we're kind of in favor of what's being proposed because we're trying to encourage
Correct.
smaller units, affordable, not really, using the word affordable has double meanings here, and it's not affordable in the sense of low income or even 80% of median income. We want to encourage something that you can buy, something that's not $1.5 million or $2 million single family home in town, so that seniors or young families, young couples, young families can afford to buy something in town, especially seniors who want to stay in town after selling their homes. So
Paul, can you remind me of what the cost it will be of those units? Did they share that with us?
I don't know that it's really been totally developed. If you go to the town meeting website, the town's
Right,
website that has, there is a concept plan that's there that you can click on and see where the condo units would be built, where the conservation land, where the open spaces that would go to the town is, and it does have something of a drawing of 70 condo units, and they do look like they're close, they're squeezed together. But, that's, when I got home tonight, there was a flyer in my mailbox. You can't really see it. Not signed by any particular individual, but it's clearly a neighborhood group who does not want to see the condos put in there. And I read through this, and I feel that unfortunately, these people do not know the process, which I don't expect them to know the process, but they don't know the process. Because as I said, what's in front of town meeting is just, are you going to vote for $2.5 million to be spent to purchase open space if it's available? There's a lot that's left to be done. I mean, people people are complaining that there hasn't been a traffic study, that there hasn't been an environmental impact study. That there hasn't been meetings with neighbors. All those, in my opinion, are premature for the condo complex. But, you know, my purpose tonight is to ask whether we as a board want to speak in favor of the concept of we as a planning board want to encourage the development of condo complexes, especially where they have an affordable housing component to it, and it has age-appropriate component to it for seniors who wish to downsize and young families who wish to find housing that's affordable for them to move into Needham, or whether we just want to stay silent at this point. And I know it's awfully, you know, it's less than a week in front of us.
I have some thoughts, but I first I'm going to turn to Jean, and then I'm going to turn to Artie. Jean?
Yes, I went on the tour this Sunday afternoon, as did Paul, and I had been to the site before a couple of times, simply as, you know, enjoying going for a walk in our lovely woods and wetlands. I'm surprised, Paul, that you said we should take a position on the possible development of the land that's to be sold privately.
I'm not saying we should, I'm questioning whether.
Yeah, because you started out by saying the issue is whether we want to purchase this land for conservation purposes. And that's what's before town meeting.
Right.
And I would like to take a position in favor of that. You know,
in favor of that element of it.
Yeah, we value our open space. Look at you know, I was very disappointed in the subdivision on the other side of Chestnut Street, not far from this, you know, where, you know, you had the two subdivisions, I forget the name of the street, the big subdivision we worked on in the past couple of years.
Heather Lane?
What's that?
Heather Lane?
Heather Lane, yes. And we were trying to negotiate at least the grant of an easement to allow people to walk down to the river and along the river. And our conservation department wasn't even pushing for that. I was kind of disappointed. So we got a conservation restriction out of that, but the restriction merely restricts development in a wetland area that's restricted anyway. Here, we actually got land that people in our town can walk on forever and enjoy the bluebird meadow. And we want to support that, don't we? For only $2.5 million.
Jean, it says that for right now it's that use, but it could be a different municipal use in the future.
That's a very important issue. Paul, didn't you say, or I overheard you say?
I intend,
yeah,
separate from the planning board, this is why I didn't want to mention it now, as an individual, Natasha, my intention is to make two motions to amend. One is to add the language that they currently have for the 3-acre lots to the 28 acres, for the intention that it be conservation land and cannot be used for municipal purposes. And a second motion for all three sections to make it clear that control is given to the Conservation Commission, adding language that references the Conservation Commission statute for for the 3 parcels. That would remove the possibility of putting a municipal building there. Although I've been told, and looking at the map, I can understand it, that as a practical matter, they can't put a municipal building there because there's lack of access. My answer to that is some bright architect, including one who's sitting here, can always find a way to figure out how to get the access. And the opposite of that is the select board wants to bank the 24 acres so that they can trade it for current conservation land, which is a requirement of the Commonwealth. When you take land out of conservation, out of Article 97 of the state constitution, you have to put into conservation in Article 97 an equal amount of acreage. Well, my attitude is great. So now you feel like you've got 24 or 28 acres. So let's take 15 acres out of Ridge Hill and put a municipal building at Ridge Hill, because we've got acreage across the street that's landlocked that we can substitute for it.
Or an indoor hockey rink. Wasn't that a proposal that was floated for land at Ridge Hill?
A municipal building, which could be a hockey rink, and it's not just Ridge Hill. It could be at the town forest.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what,
and so,
the reason they want to have that for general municipal purposes. It wouldn't need any legislative approval to use it, to trade it for some other land and say, now, we're gonna restrict this now for conservation in compensation for using that other land, or a hockey rink or whatever. Yeah.
So, I do plan on making those proposals. I'm thinking about, in my speech, talking about the condominiums, because one of the things that's mentioned here is that they'll come in and they'll clear cut where the 70 condo units are going to go. And my answer to that is, we don't have a tree bylaw. If this doesn't go through, then the whole 64 acres can be sold to a developer who can go in there and just clear cut the entire 64 acres.
Right.
And they will clear cut the 6 acres that are on Charles River Street.
Yeah, those 6 acres are very important.
Those are 6 buildable lots.
Those 6 acres right up there in Charles River Street, opposite the Ridge Hill Reservation, if they're preserved, that preserves the whole look of that whole stretch of street as a preserve, as an open space resource. Whereas if they get built on, you could, with the acre zoning, you could have 3 great big homes here and 3 great big homes there. I'm making a pitch here saying, I think that there's good reason for us to support this, even if we don't go so far as to be supporting Paul's amendments, because even the floodplain area, what I call the Bluebird Meadow, it will likely always be used for open space in the future because it really can't be built on, even if it's used to trade for some other parcel of conservation land that the town wants to use. That's a separate issue in a way. All I'm doing is separating the issues. We can support the acquisition as a planning board. Because we want to see this open space.
In theory,
right?
But it's tantamount to failure.
Failure?
I hope not, but I understand the clarity, Paul, that you're looking to create with the amendments, and I'm not going to stand in your way to make those amendments. I hope that, and I know this is a controversial subject, I fear that although there are some valid concerns or questions, that if the town meeting opposes this, and then the by right solution is a consequence town meeting is going to have to live with, and which is the antithesis of what this board supports. So It's my 2 cents, but Paul, Artie, go ahead. You had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm really not certain why we're separating this purchase of this land from the condo units looking to be built by the developer, by North.
They're not really separate.
That's right. But I don't know why we're making it sound like they are. They're very much linked together. So, so a couple of things. One is, that we've had a stance, and the town has had a stance that when projects like the developments are going in, we look for a certain percentage of affordable housing units. From everything I hear, all that's being looked at here is 7% affordable housing units, not the 10 or 12 that we normally look at. So that's a little outrageous in my mind of why that's the only amount that's being looked at, because that's everything I've read, everything I've heard. That's what it is. The other thing is, the current owners of this property, they do have certainly the parents of them did have a high regard for conservation land, and as Gene, as you point out, that lower section going down to the river is not likely ever going to be developable and can't be developable. And so what the town is then doing is buying land which can't be developed, which means that it takes it out of the tax base from the developer, so they're not paying the town taxes on that land, and we're buying it from them. So that's one thing that's going on.
Oh,
And
6 acres up by the road can easily.
I understand this. No, I understand the 6 acres up by the loan. No, I can appreciate that. Okay, so I can appreciate that. But we're talking.
May I suggest, because I don't have clarity myself, but I did hear Janet Bernardo say something when I was on the walk that indicated that it may be possible to develop part of that meadow.
Well, there's a lot of things that are going to be thrown around. One of the things being thrown around is if we don't do anything, the whole thing's clear cut. Everything's clear cut. Well, okay, I hate living in this fear factor way of promoting stuff. The same thing happened. I won't phrase it. And it's happened before. I hate living in that fear factor aspect of it. The certainly current owners of the property don't want that to be happening.
No, Artie, I'm going to tell you what I heard.
Yes.
I heard that there are 2 children.
Yep.
One of whom has the same conservation concerns as his parents and would like to see the town get some of the property. The other child is only interested in selling the property for the highest possible price.
I think, hold on, Paul, I'm interrupting here. I'm interrupting everybody.
Why?
Because, Artie, I think we're getting a little far afield in our britches on this. This is not a forum for us to discuss, our feelings and hearsay. I don't doubt what you're saying, Paul, but I don't think this is the forum or the responsibility of the planning board. I think the question before the planning board is, do we take a position to formally approve this? And if so, what weight will that have given the hour of taking this matter up? And what forum do we communicate the planning board's, result of a vote if we decide to take one? Lee, how would we communicate that?
Let me finish. Let me finish. A lot of people have been saying a lot of things. Let me finish. I mean, Paul and I were both on the Conservation Commission. We want, clearly clearly Paul's talking in the sense that we want conservation land. I want conservation land. Okay, I'm just in the mindset that I do not think we need to spend our money to get.
Artie, this is not the forum. Artie, I'm not. I'm ruling you out of order. You're challenging the chair. I've ruled you out of order. That's it. That's it. I don't allow you. Artie, no, I am not. You're out of order. The chair does not recognize Artie.
You interrupt me too much.
Yes.
Let me just
Artie, this is not the forum and the place. You're disregarding the authority of the chair. If you don't cease and desist, I'm going to have you removed from the meeting. If you're not going to follow the decorum of the board, I'm not. Artie, I'm not. Artie, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm going to
Okay,
take a
we'll
motion.
have words
I'm going to
about
take
this.
a motion
We'll have
to
words about
adjourn
this,
the
no doubt.
meeting if you cannot abide by the rules of the board and how we conduct our meetings. That's true for all of us. I interrupted Paul and I stopped Paul. And I would do so to anyone else because otherwise it's equally disrespectful. The chair was clear. This is not the forum for our personal discussion and our own observations on this subject matter. The only issue before the board at this hour with respect to this item is whether or not the planning board is going to take up a vote to either support this or not. That's the only item already in front of us. And my question to Lee was, Lee, how would that, at this hour, how would we communicate the board's vote if we did take a vote? What form does that take at town meeting?
Well, you probably contact the town moderator and ask to be recognized to speak in favor of the article.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
You would just say, you would just say that the planning board took a vote.
okay, so I do, Natasha, would you like to speak? So would you like to make a motion or speak to the
No,
potential
I
for
just
a motion?
wanted to say, I think we should support it, but I think we should think about what the 70, what's coming next, which is the 70 units and how that's gonna come about. But I think we should support it.
I think we should support it as well. And when it comes to the development, I want to understand better the applicability of the so-called friendly 40B process. I was saying, oh, they have to have 20%, or even 25% affordable. And
think
it
they do have
turns
to have
out I'm
20%.
wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't understand it. Has the 40B process changed since when I used to?
I had the same understanding, Jean, that you had. Karen Sonneborg and I had the same understanding. She wrote a lot of the papers that were actually talking about how the WIP was supposed to be applied. But there's some ambiguity in the language, and as I understand it, the counsel for the developer and our town council has spoken with the appropriate people of DHCD, and their interpretation is, in the context of how this is being proposed, it can be below the 25% level.
It's an amazing thing, really, because it's usually up to the planning board to approve subdivisions, and we've got a cluster zoning bylaw, and we've got all these.
No, they're outside the zoning rules. I mean, so that's why they're doing
it's completely outside the zoning rules.
Well, that's my objection. I mean, that's
It's
my
not going to
objection.
have the level of affordability that is what usually justifies being outside the zoning rules.
As
And
I understand it,
I just wish I understood it better to speak confidently.
I agree,
about it.
Jean.
Yeah, that's the main objection I have.
I would suggest you follow up with Chris Heath. He had the conversation with the person that administers the program for DHCD and their council. And he can probably tell you the specific portions of the statute where the ambiguous language sits.
Would it be all right if I or we, Natasha and I, if these are the two, since we're on the housing plan working group, we should
I mean, I'm
understand
concerned about what's gonna be built there and the affordability and, I mean,
certainly
is it gonna continue? Now you're gonna have 70 more problems, right? Like, to make, now we're gonna go from 1.4 million up. I don't understand what planning and zoning, what responsibility or what our purview is for this land.
Contacting town council always costs money, so I don't want to say we can just do it.
Well, it might be worth
You
it,
know my
Jean,
attitude on that, Gene. I've got no problem with the lawyer.
People
If Lee says we
use
may
town
do it.
council.
so
People
that-
use town council for things they shouldn't be using it. I think this is one where you need more information.
I'll contact Chris because, and I'll set up a time for the two of you and myself to meet with him. He had mentioned to me, he told me, because I pushed back, I said, the rule's 25%, where are they coming up with this number? And he said he thought the law read the same way. And he said there was a specific provision in the law that where the language was not clear, and DHCD, the person who's in charge of implementing the program, indicated that DHCD would issue a site eligibility letter for a proposal as it was being proposed here with this lower affordability threshold,
And
which would then get it in front of the ZBA.
is it going to be age restricted or not?
Yes, suppose.
No, age targeted, it's not age
Age
restricted.
targeted, it's not age restricted.
It's not age
Because
restricted.
usually DHCD opposes age restrictions.
No,
So
they're gonna
I have a
market it-
question.
They're gonna market it to seniors, I believe they're also gonna market it to young families.
You're right, okay.
Natasha,
All right,
you had a
well,
question?
Yeah, I
We'll
just have a,
try to understand this so that we can report back to the committee at the meeting on 12:15 on Monday. Could we can arrange a talk with,
I'll reach out to Chris and see what time I can make work. Natasha, you're always the hard person, so let me know what times work for you, and we'll try to work around you.
just send me some times and, yeah, I'll send you some time. So I guess what I'm getting to is, if we don't agree with it, the town may not have the opportunity to have this land because they're gonna sell it to the developer anyway, right?
They're not gonna sell it to this developer, because this developer is not prepared to pay in full what the foster family wants.
But they could find another
Plus the
developer to share it.
Plus the fact that if we're not getting the conservation land, why should we approve the 70 units?
No, I guess my question is, if town meeting doesn't approve it, what will happen to the property?
I
It'll
think
go
you'll
back on the well, it might just go back on the market.
Right,
Yes.
so, but a developer could buy it and develop the whole thing.
Correct.
yes.
Well,
I think-
there's already been one developer that came and went.
Yeah,
that's true.
that's
I
one.
mean, you have the 2 lots on Charles River Street, which are very easy A&R lots. I mean, those 6 lots would be very easy to subdivide and put houses on. And those lots themselves have trails that have been used by people historically, which will
Right,
link.
no, I understand. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, so, I mean, the whole
And
70
the other
unit
parcel,
thing.
the other parcel is subdividable. You can bring a subdivision road in and subdivide it. I think it's just really a question of how many buildable lots would you get. One of the issues they have there is that there's a dead end street limit here, and they probably, in order to get the maximum out, they would probably need to bring a road out to Whitman Road, and there are access issues there that are constraints. I mean, the Bell Lane subdivision ultimately found a connection to Whitman Road, which is why they got a long dead end street in that location. So you would probably see it just, subdivided into conventional single family lots.
Yeah, I've heard like maybe 26. That's kind of like what I thought before, is it can be like 26 units versus 70.
But whatever it is, until we get a tree bylaw, a developer could come in and say, okay, I'm gonna get 26 house lots, and here's where I'm gonna put them, and he comes in with a bulldozer and just takes down all the trees.
Mhm.
And from what I've seen of the topography, those trees are gonna be right behind Whitman Road. So if the Whitman Road residents think that they're gonna preserve the woods behind Whitman Road by opposing what's happening next Monday, I think they're totally wrong, because I think that's where the trees are gonna come out so that they can put in single-family houses.
So let us return to the question in front of us. It sounds like and Artie, I see your hand is still up. I'll come back to you in a
I'm
second.
sorry, no, my apologies. That meant to come down. Sorry about
So
that.
I think what's in front of us right now, Adam, is something that I've raised that we should further discuss on Monday at 12.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So we're resolved that Lee will coordinate with Natasha and Jean an opportunity for them to discuss with town council, and then we'll resolve at that meeting next Monday, at our meeting next Monday, before town meeting, whether we will adopt, whether we'll take up a vote, and if so, what the vote is, and then we'll speak to it at town meeting. Is that correct?
Are we basing this partially, Mr. Chair, are we basing this partially or greatly on what the answer is if the town meeting votes for this money? I think that's tantamount to also agreeing to what the select board is trying to accomplish, and that's an agreement with the developer to allow the 7 units with essentially possibly only 5 affordable units. That's my understanding. that we're voting is definitely.
May I ask, Artie, I just want to understand, I know that at least I was told that they're still working on a purchase and sale agreement, the town is.
No, the town
you
is
think
not, the developer is.
Oh, the developer is, okay.
developer
Do you
is.
think there's actually going to be a binding, I can't imagine, a binding agreement between the select board that they will approve of 40B development?
Well, that's the question to Chris Heap, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Hearings?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the only way the developer is gonna, is the only way this is coming about is mine. If I was a developer, the only way I would then agree to pay the money, the certain money to the town, is if I had an agreement in hand that I could do what I want to do with the 7 units only.
I agree with Artie.
Affordable. That's the only way this is happening.
But
So-
Artie, it's not up to the select board. It's in front of the zoning board of appeals.
But
And to some extent, it's in front of a state agency.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
but-
the select board has to be a partner with the Friendly Lip. I mean, I
Right.
think they need to sign off on the proposal.
They are the gatekeepers
Yeah.
So
That's the
that-
problem.
So we're gonna
select
get
board
clarity on this on
that
Monday.
allows it to go to the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah,
So is the
that's why I
select
don't.
board
Final word.
always
Yeah.
kind of making the agreements on developments in Needham?
Well,
Oh.
they're not all the same, but I think when it comes to 40B projects, I think they have a certain level of participation, especially
Friendly
here where
40Bs.
they're, what's that?
Friendly 40Bs.
Yeah,
Friendly.
There's
Yeah.
only been one friendly 40B in Needham, and that was the rest home next to the Congregation Church. That's the one.
Wasn't the Kendrick, wasn't the large,
Yeah, they were both friendly 40Bs, the Kendrick and,
yeah, I thought,
They were?
yeah,
anywho,
those large developments.
I did
were all
not realize
negotiated.
that. Oh, my
the
goodness. I
two
did not
large
realize
apartment
that.
buildings that's in Needham Crossing, the industrial park area.
They were all negotiated.
does
They were
someone,
both 40Bs.
does
They were done
someone,
as friendly 40Bs. I did not realize that. Sorry.
does someone want to make a motion to adjourn, or there's more items to discuss?
No, we're having a good discussion now.
Okay, keep talking, keep discussing.
Well, I mean, I think it does bring up a good point as far as what, where is our authority, talking about authority being taken away, where is our authority taken away? And if our authority is essentially being taken away.
What do you mean by our?
Well, if the planning board, to some degree, if the planning board authority is taken away as far as any division going on there by a vote at town
It's
meeting.
not in our authority to begin with, to be taken away.
It's not in our authority at all.
Well, I mean, no subdivision there would ever be in our.
Oh, a subdivision, a developer's subdivision would come to us.
Yes,
But this type of a
Friendly 40B
development,
but
A
this
friendly
type of.
40B goes to the ZBA.
That's what that's what I'm saying, Paul.
Yeah.
If the town meeting votes on this, all of a sudden, we're giving approval of something that we at this point, we still don't even know what it is we're approving. So that, and it's something that we wouldn't necessarily want to approve if it's only 7% affordable housing. That's my concern, Mr.
What's
Chair.
in front
So that's
of
my
town,
concern.
what's in front of town meeting is, and there has to be an agreement between the developer and the select board on this eventually.
Yeah, correct.
But I imagine that what the agreement is going to be is that if the developer gets his approvals of the friendly 40B, he will sell the 28 acres that is designated for open space to the town for $2.5 million.
Correct.
And what's
Right.
in the town meeting is to give the select board the knowledge that they have the $2.5 million in hand to be able to enter into that agreement
correct.
with developer.
Perfect, Paul.
Yes.
I can see that would all be lawful. What I had imagined was the select board saying, we will grant, the approval, and the zoning board of appeals will approve it. Of course they can't promise that.
Of course they can't.
Yeah, but if they grant it,
But if they
then,
then we get the conservation, the open space land for $2.5 million.
and that's how they're tied together. Okay. That makes sense.
Any further
So-
discussion?
But as Lee pointed out, if the select board isn't in agreement with the developer, then there's nothing to take to the ZBA.
I understand that, but that's how this whole thing came about, is at this point, is the select board has been in agreement with the developer, with the plan, the ethereal plan that's been out
Yes.
there,
Yes,
which is 70 units with possibly 7% affordable housing. That's what we have to take, and that's what we have to take as faith at this point, because that's where it's been out there.
That's 10%, and that's the
No,
same percentage.
no,
we
no,
apply
7,
at,
no, 7,
at
no,
the
7.
Wingate and at Carter's building.
No, 7, it was only 5 affordable housing units out of 7.
Oh, I thought you said 7.
5 units, that's all they were
7.
proposing? I
Yeah.
don't recall seeing that, but I'll
That's
take,
everything I've read and heard is at 7%.
that's not very good.
No, it's not. No, that's
look
where
forward-
that's where
I
my
look forward
brain
to hearing back from Gene and Natasha with
Yeah.
as to their conversation with Chris
Yeah.
Heath on that issue.
So we're clear and
Mr.
resolved.
Chair,
on
I
the
move we
direction.
adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second,
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll come to the vote. Paul Alpert,
Aye.
Artie Crocker,
Aye.
Natasha Spada,
aye.
Gene McKnight.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Glad you're feeling better, Artie.